Well, hello there. It's so great to be back. Oh my goodness. So I'm recording the day after Christmas, and oh my goodness, what a beautiful day. We had seriously just the most relaxing day ever. It was perfect. We stayed in pajamas all day long. We ate sushi. We also had some traditional fixings, We opened gifts. It was just awesome. And one of the really cool things that was really impressive, if you will, my daughters wanted the new Barbie Dreamhouse, and it's really, really big, and it comes in a lot of pieces. And we all know how putting together things is not really what we love doing, on Christmas Day, or whatever holiday you celebrate. And my 10-year-old literally put the whole thing together herself. Kid you not. Now, her 12-year-old sister did help her. They put the entire thing together. I was so impressed. It was amazing. And there's something else that we did, which is definitely going to be our new tradition. So we got up, the girls opened their gifts, and when they were done opening them, we were just like ready to do something else. And so we actually Mark and I saved our gifts for this morning. So we actually had kind of a 2-day, Christmas morning affair, and it was awesome. I mean, I'm going to for sure make sure we continue that tradition. It was really, really special. Okay, so many things to chat about, and what I decided I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little series for you. So the next 3 episodes are going to be all on perimenopause. And the way that I'm going to approach these episodes, in episode 1, we're going to talk about weight management and metabolism in perimenopause. In episode number 2, we're going to talk about mindset shifts that we need to have in perimenopause. And then in episode 3, we're going to talk about fitness, adaptations, and really the recommendations for how you can truly be your healthiest self during perimenopause and beyond as it relates to fitness. And so I'm really excited about this series. I have a lot of good information to share with you, and I am really passionate about helping all of us who are in perimenopause, right? And, everyone else too. I just think that it's really important because, we're hearing a lot more about it, and there's a lot of different information. And to be quite honest, you're going to be having to make some decisions on how you want to approach it. And so without further ado, let's dive in. So today is going to be all about perimenopause. We're going to talk about metabolism, and we're going to talk about weight management. So if you're watching on YouTube, my pup just joined us. She heard all about perimenopause, and she just wanted to hear about it too because she's 5. So technically, she's 30 in dog years, right? So she's not having to worry about it quite yet, but she is going to have to worry about her muscle mass, okay? Because when we turn 30, remember, if we're not eating and working out in a way to maintain muscle mass, we're losing muscle mass at about a 1% per year type of rate, okay? So you hear that, pup? You got to make sure you're doing your strength training. Okay, it doesn't help that she actually was recently diagnosed with Cushing's disease. So she has excess cortisol, which is one of the things we're going to talk about. And, I have to tell you, we have her on medication now, and hopefully her levels will become better, and she's going to be as good as new. Okay, and it's so funny because when she got that Cushing's diagnosis, I knew that I was definitely supposed to be her dog mom because it was very subtle. Her signs were pretty subtle. And I was thinking she has Cushing's. And sure enough, yes, it just goes to show you how these dogs, they are your children. They are your children. So anyway, okay. So let's start off with a scenario. So one of the biggest, I would say, things that I see now is I have women who are coming to me just about 40. So they're almost in their 40s, or they are in their 40s. Now, don't get me wrong. I work with women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s. I have an 80-year-old client right now, just FYI. With all that being said, they say, it just seems that once I hit 40, all of a sudden my midsection just has really increased in circumference. My waist is bigger, my clothes aren't fitting, I have excess abdominal fat now, I didn't have it before, and I'm doing everything that I used to do. Nothing's really changed. And all of a sudden, I just don't even recognize myself anymore. And one of the first things that happens is people start to think that there's something wrong with them, right? Because we weren't really trained to expect the changes that actually start happening in perimenopause. And we know that, the age at which we start perimenopause is going to be different for everyone. Okay, so that's really the first thing I start hearing. And then I hear, and I'm up 10 pounds on the scale. And again, I'm getting really frustrated. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the first kind of the metabolic changes in perimenopause, and then we're going to talk more about weight management strategy. Okay, so the first thing that I want to say is that, in terms of what you weigh, okay, it is going to change over time. It just is. And one of the things I want to make sure that you're not doing, I don't want you to set a goal weight that is a weight lower than any weight you've ever achieved in your adult life, unless you are using medication-assisted weight loss, okay? Because that's not realistic, okay? So a lot of times women will say, well, when I was 18, I weighed this weight, and now I weigh this weight. Well, that doesn't matter to me. In your peak adult life, you were a weight, okay? And it was a weight that you were pretty consistently at. We can't pick a number that's much lower than that weight when we hit perimenopause, okay? I'm just putting it out there. Now, you can achieve lower, yes you can, all right? If you have a perfect metabolic state, you can do it without medication, but you're gonna have to actually be really diligent, and you're gonna have to give up a lot of things, and you have to be willing to wanna do that, okay? Also, if you do have insulin resistance, if you have leptin resistance, and if you are on a weight loss medication, could you achieve a lower weight than your lowest adult weight? You could. You definitely could. Okay, so I'm just putting that caveat in there, but I'm setting us up to kind of move towards, and this will show up again in the mindset section in episode number 2 that you're going to be hearing all about. But the idea is that we have to stop focusing on the numbers on the scale, and we really have to shift into focusing on body composition, okay? Because what has happened when somebody comes in and they say to me, all of a sudden, my midsection is bigger than it was, okay? So we know that body fat percentage has increased. Now, here's the thing. If we hadn't been following in bodies, we don't know if muscle mass has decreased. We're assuming it has if the individual says, I don't strength train and I really don't know how much protein I eat. We can kind of assume that some muscle has been lost. And that's typically what we're seeing in terms of metabolic changes. Most women who are entering perimenopause, are losing some amount of muscle, all right? And the other thing that's happening is their hormones are changing, okay? So estrogen is dropping. Testosterone is dropping, okay? We know when estrogen drops, yes, we're gonna be more likely to gain body fat, particularly in our midsection. Same thing when testosterone drops, okay? So these hormonal shifts that are happening, all right, are predisposing us to body fat gain, all right? And then combined with muscle mass loss, what potentially is happening is our basal metabolic rate is also decreasing, okay? So we have the hormones at play, and then we also have this decreased metabolic state. So yes, we will accumulate additional body fat because of those things, because of the hormonal changes, as well as potentially the basal metabolic rate changes, okay? So then we become, concerned because we're not feeling our best. Maybe we're not sleeping. We're having maybe some symptoms of hormonal shifts in perimenopause. I mean, one of the big things that isn't really talked about a lot is a shift in testosterone. Okay, we hear about estrogen and progesterone all the time, but we don't hear about testosterone enough. There are some women leaders in the medical field who are talking about it, and there are fantastic resources to follow. For example, Dr. Kelly Casperson, she talks a lot about testosterone, and that's where I started hearing it first. And so recently, and I'm just going to share with you all, I had my day 3 hormones checked because, I'm going to be 45 soon and not having a whole lot of symptoms. But for me, it is important for me to have a baseline of where I'm at. And the one thing that I noticed is that I definitely was noticing some fatigue, definitely felt more tired. I'm not a napper, and all of a sudden I was really craving naps. And I thought that that was quite interesting. And I had my labs checked, and I will tell you, estrogen and progesterone are actually pretty good right now. believe it or not, maybe too much information, but yeah, I have a lot of, well, my AMA level, right? Am I saying that right? I think I am. But my egg reserves, they're great, okay? So I think that menopause isn't for a while yet. But the interesting thing is my testosterone level has pretty much tanked. So I will tell you that in my younger years, it was really a healthy level, okay? Really healthy level. And then when I hit about the age of 35, I did have a check then, and it was still really healthy, but had decreased. And this time around, oh my goodness, it's like non-existent. However, there's not great recommendations for supplementing with testosterone in women. And so actually I reached out to my primary doctor and said, hey, just out of curiosity, do you prescribe, topical testosterone? And she said, usually I refer to menopause specialists because it's not something we're routinely doing. And so I for sure am going to see a menopause specialist. And I actually have a menopause specialist in my group, Dr. Komal Patil Sisodia. She has a great podcast. She's another great resource. Reset and Renew is her podcast. And again, she's fantastic. And she looked at my labs and said, okay, well, the only thing I think about for you right now is testosterone. And I just am floored with this because I always had really solid levels. And it was amazing to me just how they tanked and so quickly, and how really the fatigue was very, very obvious to me. Now, the fatigue can be from a lot of things, right? However, it's a different kind of fatigue, okay? And so gonna meet with a menopause specialist locally and kind of just see recommendations on, supplementation and whatnot. But in general, the thing I have noticed, it's not easy for me to gain muscle anymore. Okay, back in the day, I could pop muscle on like it was nobody's business. My muscle mass has stayed exactly the same despite really optimizing nutrition, optimizing strength training. Okay, I'm staying exactly the same. And to be honest with you, I've even adopted a regimen in the programming I'm doing for my clients where we have a day that's pure max strength. So we actually go to pretty low reps and we go up higher in weight. And even with that implementation, I still haven't seen much gain. Now, I will tell you that the creatine has really helped in terms of the volume of my muscles. So the appearance of my muscles, actually do appear like there's more of it. However, when I'm checking my in-bodies, it's really kind of staying quite stable. Okay, so I think for me, the creatine is going to be super helpful in maintaining my muscle mass. But unless I'm eating in a pretty significant surplus and also probably at this point having some kind of topical testosterone supplement, I think that my muscle mass is going to be pretty consistent. I think it might be hard to kind of gain a whole lot more. But that's not to say that we can't gain muscle mass in perimenopause, because we absolutely can. There's some things I can do to tweak so that I can do that. Okay, but the things that we're up against are going to be the hormonal shifts. And again, it's definitely going to be potentially that decrease in basal metabolic rate. Okay, but there's more. I want to talk about more things. So when those things are happening with the estrogen, testosterone, and then also the potential decrease in basal metabolic rate, we're going to store more body fat in our midsection. Okay, now we may be also storing visceral body fat. Okay, the visceral body fat is the body fat that's around our organs. Okay, we consider it the dangerous body fat. But the thing is, and also I want to point out, with the estrogen loss, also we're at risk of bone loss. Okay, that's the other thing that's really significant around this time frame. And that's why you're hearing so much about, all these physicians who are becoming menopause specialists to really help with, okay, this is how we potentially replace hormones. And they're doing fantastic work, because think about what we're up against. For years, we were told that hormone replacement is bad, right? Causes cancer, does all these things. And again, studies really looked at these very high doses. And now things are being done differently and sooner. And so we're actually seeing positive benefits with hormone replacement therapy. Now, again, there's going to be some women where it's not going to be possible. Maybe family history of a certain kind of breast cancer, or have had breast cancer, all those things. However, it's just important that we know what's out there. Okay, so decrease estrogen, testosterone, also, progesterone, of course, but I'm mentioning the estrogen and testosterone because when we're talking about the body fat accumulation, I want to kind of stick with these two. We see it in our midsection. So then what happens when we have more of an accumulation of body fat in our midsection, and then also potentially visceral? We're going to have more insulin resistance. Okay, so this is what I say to most of my women who are in perimenopause. Even if your labs are still hanging in there, even if your hemoglobin A1C looks top notch and fantastic, when we start to see that accumulation of body fat, we probably do have some degree of impaired insulin sensitivity. Okay? So when that happens, it's a cascade, right? So also, inflammation in our body. So we know that there's also a lot of musculoskeletal changes that are happening in perimenopause, let's just say. And so let's say there's more inflammation in the body. Okay, that's going to be, something else that we're up against. And so also, as I mentioned, as insulin resistance increases, that is going to cause, a different kind, but more inflammation in our body as well. Okay, now there's more things. We're probably not sleeping as well. So then what happens? Okay, well, hello cortisol, hello ghrelin. Okay, cortisol is our stress hormone. What does cortisol do? Cortisol can potentially create more insulin resistance. Okay, and also it has its own things. It causes a higher blood sugar. It makes it so that insulin doesn't really drive our substrate into our muscle cells as easily. Okay, so it's going to be promoting more insulin resistance. Okay, so we're kind of hitting this area that has to be really, really taken care of, okay? We have to be participating in stress management, okay? What's that, all right? What's emotional regulation? What's stress management? Yeah, we have to start doing that if we haven't started already, okay? So we have the stress management piece, and then we have the sleep piece, which if, let's just say progesterone's an issue, okay, that's one of the first things we see, sleep disturbances, okay? So really getting on a good sleep hygiene, okay? This is so important. Ghrelin, I mentioned, is our hunger hormone, okay? If we're not getting enough sleep, ghrelin increases, and when ghrelin increases, we are hungrier. Okay, so now we may be dealing with some insulin resistance and now we're hungrier, okay, and maybe we're eating a little bit more and now our metabolism isn't as great, so what are we doing? We're gaining a little bit more body fat, okay? So all of these things are feeding off each other. So much here. So what's happening in general is metabolism is slowing down and then hormones are essentially at play to really promote more fat storage, which then leads to potentially more insulin resistance. And then, we start seeing these physical changes. We don't like them. We don't feel good. And then we start getting really discouraged, okay? And again, I'm going to chat more about these mindset shifts that we need to have in perimenopause. And this is really kind of feeding into that. But what I want to move into next is really this idea of weight management. So what do we do? What do we do when we're up against all of these things that are making our body composition want to shift into a higher body fat percentage? And for most of us, it's really muscle mass is decreasing and body fat is increasing. So we're actually seeing our highest body fat percentages to date because we have that lower muscle mass, okay? And then we have that higher body fat accumulation, okay? So in general, that's gonna create, our highest body fat percentage. And when we see higher body fat percentages, we see less muscle tone, right? And, individuals who want to see more muscle tone and they're not seeing it, again, that's discouraging, okay? There's so much we can do about this though. And that's what I really wanna get into. So I wanna get into the weight management part, okay? Because one of the things I told my 12-year-old daughter, I said, listen, you're getting to the age where we really can start optimizing your muscle because you have this window in your life, okay? It's about from now until about the age of 30. And I told her 20 because it's true. That's when she's probably gonna have her highest levels of things that can help her gain muscle mass, which is the reality. You have this time period where you can really start now preparing for perimenopause. Isn't this nuts? It's like, okay, hi, you're 12. Let's start preparing for perimenopause now. Let's try to put as much muscle mass on you as possible. And the reason for that is because the more muscle mass you have, the more insulin sensitive you are, okay? The less insulin resistant you are. And I want to tell you a story. It's a personal story, but I have a history of PCOS. However, I never had issues with, in my younger years, never had issues with any of my labs, okay? So, actually my hemoglobin A1C was always relatively low. I had a pretty easy time getting pregnant, to be honest with you. I was quite shocked with that because I've always had really long cycles and actually got pregnant pretty easily, okay? And I'm really thankful for that because I was preparing that was not going to be easy, knowing that I had PCOS. Also, I can tell you that I dealt with, the sequela of, definitely had facial hair. That's been lasered off, right? All of these different things. But what I will tell you is my muscle mass was so high when I was at that age. It was extremely high. And it's still high to this date, but it was even higher then. That I believe that I protected myself from insulin resistance because of my muscle mass. Okay, so what I want to tell you is that right now in perimenopause, the name of the game is doing everything that we can do to maintain and or gain muscle mass. Okay, because here's why. So if we gain muscle mass, we will increase our basal metabolic rate. Okay. The other things that we'll do is that we will make our muscle, our current muscle, even if we're just maintaining muscle, we will make it more metabolically active, okay? We're gonna be producing more energy within it, okay? If we're doing strength training, which is gonna be required to maintain and gain muscle mass, the other things we're doing is that we are also enhancing insulin sensitivity by helping our muscles to have kind of more space to take up more glucose. That's the best way I can say it, right? So even if we're not gaining muscle, right, and potentially, let's just say that we probably are if you're doing consistent strength training and eating right, then we're developing kind of more of those receptors on our cells, insulin receptors. So overall, we'll be more insulin sensitive. Okay, so the name of the game for weight management and perimenopause is honestly maintaining and or gaining muscle mass. And I say weight management, and I don't mean that we want to try to get your weight lower, but we want to really focus on your body composition. We want to get your muscle mass as high as we possibly can, and we want to then help you to kind of manage your body fat, right? You might be at an okay level where we're not having to have you lose body fat, but if you're getting into the stages where you are seeing hemoglobin A1C increasing, you are seeing cholesterol increasing, and again, cholesterol sneaky because cholesterol is actually an indication that there is some insulin resistance. Okay, so if we're seeing those things happening, even a modest amount of body fat loss is going to help with the insulin resistance. And I mean very modest, okay? Even a 3% body fat loss is huge as it relates to insulin resistance, okay? So we're gaining muscle. How are we doing this? We're committing to our strength training regimen, and we want to basically really focus on something that's baseline minimum and we're able to do. And so that's why I create strength training programs, because there's nothing worse than hearing, oh, you should be strength training. And then that's where you're left with that, but you don't know where to go. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to do it. You don't know who to trust. And so actually all of my programs are me leading the workout so that I say, hey, yes, you need to strength train. And yes, here's the program. Okay. I'm not going to just tell you you need to strength train and then not give you anything for it. Okay. So I say 10 minutes, 3 days a week is baseline minimum. And I see my women in perimenopause maintain muscle mass with even that small amount of strength training. Okay, they're becoming more insulin sensitive. They're decreasing their body fat percentages. Okay, and all of a sudden they're feeling better about perimenopause. Okay, so the name of the game is definitely going to be that strength training, adequate protein. Okay, so nutrition focus is going to be, are we getting adequate protein? And there's so much misinformation out there. It was funny. I put out a post and I had somebody say, we don't even need that much protein. And that's really interesting because what's too much protein? What's enough protein? Okay, and usually what I say for women is if you're getting about 3 servings a day, which is about 90 to 100 grams, that's gonna be excellent for muscle maintenance. Okay, so getting 3 servings of protein today. Strength training, right there, you're optimizing muscle mass potential. Okay, so you're optimizing insulin sensitivity. You're decreasing potentially having that insulin resistance. The other thing that strength training and eating well is going to do is it's going to potentially help you increase your testosterone levels, okay, and also growth hormone. All right, so this is really important because I mentioned in perimenopause, those testosterone levels also start to drop. And I'm somebody who strength trains quite a bit and mine are dropping, right? I don't know if I'm holding on to the little bit that I am because of what I'm doing. Okay, I'm holding on to some, but in general, it's gotten a lot lower. This is going to help us, okay? So as we start to think about these things, okay, so now we're increasing muscle, we're decreasing insulin resistance, potentially increasing a little bit of growth hormone, really kind of helping that testosterone to stay in place and check. In terms of our cortisol levels, if we're exercising at a moderate level and not overdoing it, exercise is a stress relief. And when we're stressed, right, we have more cortisol. So think about it this way. If we're engaging in a way to have, stress management through movement and exercise, and that's one of the big things that I promote in my programs, potentially we're going to normalize those cortisol levels, okay? Also, if you're actively engaged in clean eating and also strength training, you're going to sleep better. Okay, and when you're sleeping better, you're going to potentially have less of that increase in cortisol. Okay, so all of these things, making these small little changes in all these categories are really, really going to add up. Okay, it's not going to happen overnight. All right, so let's say you turn 40. All these things are happening. You're having, increased midsection. You have low energy. You don't feel like you, and you don't know where to turn. Okay, and it's a little overwhelming. We have to start somewhere. So the first things I say is get on that 3 days a week, 10-minute strength training, 3 servings of protein a day. Those are steps 1 and step 2. Something for stress management, okay? A good sleep hygiene regimen, all right? And then from there, it's really focusing on body composition. So following an in-body scale, or an at-home in-body, we like to call them, versus really focusing on the number on the scale, because that is going to be different. It just is. And what I say is that if you have gained body fat and you're already a little bit heavier, actually the higher body fat percentages actually help people to gain muscle. So if you have a 25%, 30%, 35% and above body fat range, you might be more likely to gain muscle. Okay. And so again, that's going to be, why don't we take advantage of that? Let's take advantage of that. And so what I say is that women in perimenopause are actually the perfect candidates to be strength training. Okay. However, think about it. Many of us who are in perimenopause now, our generation was just the generation that started kind of doing more of the strength training and athletics. But before that, my mom didn't lift weights. Okay. That was pretty rare. So we actually are very fortunate and very lucky that we have tools to do this. However, we have to commit to the long game. And so what I tell my women, who are in perimenopause, I say, listen, we're going to start here and we're going to just keep going, because what you're adopting right now is your forever strategy. You can't start strength training now, and you can't start doing your protein now and then decide you're going to get to a point where you can then stop it. No, actually, you're going to continue it. You have to continue it. Okay, because that's how you're going to then get stronger during menopause. That's how you're going to be an independent older adult. All these things are so important. I actually had a conversation with my in-laws' neighbor. So we went to their home for Christmas Eve, and their neighbor came over, and he's 95. And I said to him, okay, so tell me your secrets, because, in my line of work, we're working a lot on longevity, and, you are absolutely independent. And what is your secret? Tell me your secrets. And guess what his secrets were? And I did not even prompt him. That he stays physically active. He was showing me his squats, so he does squats. He was showing me the different arm exercises he does. He actually mows his own lawn. And he said the number one thing that he really thinks has contributed to his longevity is staying physically active with his exercise. Okay, isn't that interesting? Okay, so what I want to say is as we start to think about the weight management in perimenopause, again, I kind of told you 2 simple things. Strength training. If you don't know where to start, you're going to want to get on board with one of my programs. I have beginner strength training and I have a total fitness program. If you're a physician and you want to work with me directly, I have the program Transform. Okay. Next steps, making sure you're optimizing that protein. Okay. That is going to be key for your body composition. And we really got to be patient with those things. You have to engage in stress management. Okay. And now, I have women that are 50 and are now finally given permission to feel their feelings. All right. Doing any kind of emotional regulation work. Okay. I actually just put my group through a 14-day program on this. Okay. That's really, really important. We have to keep kind of cortisol in check. All right. Sleep. Okay. And so again, clean eating helps you sleep better. Okay. Physically active, right? Staying physically active helps you sleep better. Okay. Stress management helps you sleep better. Okay. And then the final one is really just kind of tracking progress. So not following just the number on the scale, but actually seeing what your muscle mass is doing in comparison to your body fat percentage and realizing that nothing's gone wrong and that perimenopause is actually a fantastic time to start engaging in weight management. Okay, and I'm going to go into the next episode next week where we're going to talk about mindset shifts, but this is one of them. Okay, it's this idea that going into perimenopause is actually a fantastic opportunity to learn how to strength train. Okay, if you've never done it before, what a great opportunity to start now. It's never too late. And I'll tell you that that's going to be the number one mindset shift we really have to work on. It's not too late. Nothing's gone wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Okay, and that we still have the opportunity to be the best that we can possibly be. We can be in better shape at 55 than we were at 18. And I do wholeheartedly believe that. However, it's going to take absolutely that mindset shift and also putting yourself in communities where women are really valuing this. We really see that our worth is increasing as we age, and that, again, it's not that, oh gosh, age is coming. It's all downhill from there. And a lot of women really believe that. And I refuse to believe that because I don't believe that. And so I'm really excited to continue this talk with you on how we can really optimize ourselves during perimenopause. All right, so as I mentioned, lots of great things for you to take advantage of, okay? I have a beginner strength training. I have total fitness programming. I have my Transform program, okay? This is where you work with me directly. Women physicians, 72 CME credits, okay? Now I am doing a free webinar coming up very soon, as in December 30th. I'm also giving the same webinar on January 2nd and January 4th. I'm talking about the top 5 strategies to help women physicians optimize their weight loss, okay? And this is not counting your calories, okay? We're gonna be talking about the real deal things, and the reason why it's specifically for women physicians is because women physicians have specific obstacles. Okay, and so I'm really excited. If you are not a physician, you are welcome to join the webinar. I just want to let you know that it is definitely going to have input into the different stressors that physicians do face that does impact their weight loss. All right, my friends, so you can find all these links in the show notes, and I'm so excited to get into episode number 2 next week. We'll talk to you soon.